Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are Charter Moms Chats. And I'm so excited to be talking about Edgewood ISD Schools of Innovation. And we have two special guests. So on the far side is Dr. Eduardo Hernández, who's the superintendent of Edgewood ISD. And I'm so lucky he could join us. He just got off a call, like a statewide call, anyway, super important superintendent stuff. So thank you for joining us. And Chris Nestor is the Chief of Technology, Transformation, and Innovation at Edgewood ISD. And as far as I know, he is actually humid, like not an Android, but he does he's very techie and he's full of knowledge. So all right. So thank you so much, Dr. H and Chris, for joining me on Charter Moms Chats. And we've got a lot to talk about so much that's going on in Edgewood ISD. But first, I wanted to ask Dr. H, most of our listeners are in San Antonio, but some of them are outside San Antonio, and they might not be familiar with what the significance is of Edgewood ISD, like in the history of San Antonio, in terms of equity issues on the west side of San Antonio, and like how significant it is that there are these schools of innovation coming to a part of San Antonio that's been historically so underserved in education.
So we'll start there with that talking point. Sometimes you just have to own your history. I've always said that since the day that I came in. You can be whatever it is you're going to be and have dignity in what label been given to you, but you don't have to stay there forever. Edgewood ISD, for those of you that are not from San Antonio, is one of among 17 school districts in Bexar County. That's mostly the city of San Antonio. We are, in fact, the poorest of all districts. We are at about 95% low SES. That is, most of our family of four are living under $20,000 a year. I suspect that number is going to go even up higher now since our wonderful experience with the pandemic and now Snowvid or Snowmageddon, whatever word you've got. So our numbers continue to rise, but our commitment and our challenge is going to remain the same. And so the context of that is that this district came about as a result of historical redlining in a city that has experienced much of the old Jim Crow South, which most people would understand that there were parts of the city that were divided and certain people were kept in certain parts of the city. Obviously, because this is such a great country, things progressively change. And so now we're aware of these things. Maybe we may be self-aware of it. Sometimes the systems don't fully support that. But also to have some personal accountability, I think that sometimes our community might have added to some of that in terms of our governing models, also an important thing to discuss here. Most folks in the state of Texas know us because of the finance case in Edgewood. Edgewood decided a while back that it's suing the state of Texas because it felt like it wasn't funded equally as other school districts. The results of that, you now have what was the Robin Hood plan, as it was called in the state. And so that is where most of us probably came to know Edgewood through our master's programs. But the other part of that context is the governing model that's germane to Edgewood. Many times our governing models were not working for the people, for lack of a better term. Recently in 2016, the state of Texas came in and said, no more. You cannot make decisions together. You're at each other's throat, for lack of a better word. We're going to come in. We're going to remove the elected board, put in a board of managers that are appointed by the commissioner. And then those individuals would be the ones that would be asked to lead the district. As a result of that, I got my first opportunity to be a superintendent coming out of the Dallas area, having served there many, many years. But that's the big context of things. Our journey started because of tumultuous times, but we've had a governing model now in terms of our previous board president, who is now our state monitor, Mr. Soto, and our current board president, who are leading a board alongside with me as a team that really believes in serving our constituents. Me personally, I believe that I grew up poor myself, very much like Edgewood, but I believe there is dignity in being humble, but you got to work hard. That's a strong foundation in our country. That's not going to change. You get an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. I believe in that. I won't pity you because I'm going to give you all the tools. I will serve and support you so that you can climb out or whatever context you want to use. of the situation that you're currently in. I am the eternal optimist. I will remain an eternal optimist, and I speak to that. That's my constant message to folks. And I think that I do have the audacity to dream and hope, and I will remain that way. And I think that brings another context to this perfect storm we're in terms of all the innovation we've been doing. Because I was just doing what I thought was. I always say, hey, I'm just here to help some kids, and so I've just been working, trying to be very quiet about what I'm doing. I realize it's caused attraction to other people, and I've been able to find a really good team. I'm really not the smart one here. I just work really well with the people around me. They're the smart ones. And I use my platforms. I think that's how I kind of started following you guys out there, moms. Moms are the force that keep the world together, and they're also the force that I believe moves society forward. And so I started tagging you guys because I thought, hey, someone's out there got to be looking at me. So that's the concept of where we are.
That's right. Yeah, you're a great storyteller on Twitter, but I think what's really important about what you're saying is to acknowledge the challenges that have happened in the Edgewood area, as far as generations of poverty, lack of opportunity caused by redlining and ethnic discrimination, racial discrimination. But that's not an excuse for adults in the present, right? We need to be doing our best job to create opportunity and to expect the best out of people, no matter what their economic background is. And I think that's what's so important about, right? We're not excusing anything just because of the past. We have to acknowledge that context, right? And then you talked about the change in governance from having so much turmoil and deadlock and inconsistency, and now there's a teamwork approach between you and the board and your cabinet and then those relationships you're building, that's what's manifesting in the real world with these schools, and hopefully with good outcomes for kids who will have a brighter future, regardless of the background that they're coming from.
I think I would like to add to that context that Dr. Hernandez talked about. When you think about the history of the West Side and Edgewood specifically, and you wonder why we have this need to bring in these innovation schools or zones and different types of programming for our kiddos, Dr. Hernandez with his cabinet has brought in some fundamental beliefs that our kids deserve the exact same opportunities of every other kid across the state of Texas and across the United States, as well as a fundamental belief that they can perform in all of those very same programs and models. And so when you think about, we're going to provide what traditionally has only been provided in more affluent areas. Sometimes that's just because they have this belief that, it's only the rich kids only the middle class students can actually do this type of IB work or project-based learning or Montessori or whatever the model might be. So that becomes the limiting factor, because then they're not established in the neighborhoods where the poor students are living. And then beyond that, when they are there, sometimes there's a cost associated to them. So not only are we going to ensure that our students have access to these programs, but they are not going to be charged at all for these programs. They're going to have ready, immediate access in their neighborhoods to each and every program that kids can have across the state.
Yeah. I looked at the maps of where different programs are, and there's in the past there'd been deserts, and transportation is a big issue. When there's income issues, right? Is how do you get kids places? And unfortunately, a lot of charter schools in town don't offer transportation, and that makes geographically very limiting, and it puts more of the work on the family. To have a family member who has time and a vehicle, and it creates obstacles. And you guys are trying to break down those barriers to make sure that every kid has access to all these amazing school models.
Yes, and not just within Edgewood. I mean, we've got folks. I just found out about a couple of families that are going to start driving collectively from down in not Dilly, the other one with the D. Is it Divine? Divine?
Oh, yeah, in the Shell, yeah.
Yes, because of our Burleson Center School. That school has been partnered with Texas A&M for our 18+ program. And so, we want to serve all children. You get them to our borders, we'll get them to the school that's best for them. And I think the concept of shopping around, it is very fundamental shopping around, people understand that. But I think there's more to it in terms of brokering the system and teaching you the proper language so that when you do come to the school and interact, you do have the proper tools to advocate. Advocacy is such a big deal that leads to one of our leadership zone for young men and young women. That's a personal thing with me. I have my own daughter that I raised on my own, and I believe in advocacy for young women. I said the other day on my Twitter feed, March is not just National Women's Month to make history. Women make history every day in all levels of life. And so for me, I will not limit children. I will not limit adults. Sometimes we limit ourselves, but I think that's really the fundamental thing that has crippled this wonderful community, is that we believe what we've been told, and fundamentally in our minds we're crippled. And so for me, I share my story not as look at me, look what it's not that. I believe that I was designed to serve and support people. And so I know people will look at me like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, do you really mean this? I get that up front, but I think now they're starting to see that the work, the concept of a young women's school is off the ground, the young men's school, and partnering these schools, like Mr. Nestor just mentioned the IB program. I don't recall the exact number of in terms of money, what it costs yearly. Did we say $18,000 a year?
Up to 40.
So we're going to offer the same type of programming free, and we're going to be patient and mature and understand that you can't build something overnight, that we will gradually build the school, because you're not just changing a name on a school, but the culture of the school, the mindset takes years. And so I think fundamentally that is new thinking in terms of the West Side, but we try to model that everywhere we go. And so that I think those things also added to where we are right now in this journey. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna embarrass Dr. Hernandez by asking Chris to talk about Dr. Hernandez's leadership, and like what I see it through Twitter. I see like the beliefs and like how he's inspiring people. But Chris, how do you feel that Dr. Hernandez joining the district was a turning point in terms of change in the district?
Well, I would actually say that there's kind of two components that I can think of that make a difference with him being the leader throughout this process. One is just naturally he has the experience. He's been in multiple different systems. He's worked at the different levels, from being a principal, supervising principals, working in innovation, seeing school choice models, being a part of school choice models, and in various contexts, very large districts down to smaller districts, which really gives him the knowledge, the wisdom, the foresight to say, you know what, I can recognize where this district is in their journey, and I see where they need to go. And that really helps us to be able to chart out the course in order to get where we need to be. So that his background and experience is super helpful. But just who he is as a person, when he says, I just show up and I'm like, I'm here to help kids. That's not just the statements. I mean, you can see it in leadership meetings. You can see it in our board meetings. You can see it in social media. You see it in every one of his interactions. I can personally, I suppose, embarrass him and say there's only a few leaders that I have worked with that when you have a conversation with them, you walk away feeling like $1 million. You walk away thinking, oh my gosh, I'm the most important person in this organization. I better not tell anybody else because I don't want them to know that I'm the most important person. But then you talk to other people and they think they're the most important people because they've had conversations with him. And it's not just the employees. The same thing happens from janitorial staff all the way up to the deputy superintendent, having conversations with educators. This is a leader who gets up and sets up meetings with anybody who wants to, parents or employees at 6 a.m. In what other districts do employees and parents have daily direct interaction, possibility of direct interaction with the superintendent? That just doesn't happen. So he's made himself available in those formats. And let's not forget our really famous, and when I say famous, they really are, the pláticas that we have here in the district, going into the community, into the homes of families, having a big barbecue, everybody's bringing food, potluck, and we're talking about the vision and really having a lot of conversation about these innovation zones and the things that are coming up, but also giving a format, a platform for parents to speak their minds. And I've been in those. most of them are all super positive, but there are also hard conversations that happen in those, and people don't always agree with everything, and we allow that to happen, and that's all a result of Dr. Hernandez's leadership. So all of that has really set the stage for the change to be able to move at the pace that it's is, as well as the context that we talked about before. When you're in a state of turmoil, people are ready for change, and then you bring in a leader who cares about people, cares about the children, and has the experience to walk us through the change. It's made all the difference in the world.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, and thank you, Dr. Hernandez, for letting us embarrass you like that. But I remember, like, before the pandemic, I'd see pictures of these like backyard events and the platicas, and I'm coming from the parent perspective, right? And I have this big online community of parents, and I've heard all ranges of reactions to new schools coming, and I know that it can be it can be really stressful for parents when you see change happening, especially if it's campuses that your grandparents went to and your uncle went to, and so was in the band, and so played receiver, and there's just so much wrapped up in it, and then you talk about changing that. Sometimes people get their backs up, and the only way to make change happen in that kind of context is by being a really good listener and being really present, and so bravo. I mean, you're doing the work, because like I see how fast the change is happening, but I also and I'm not naming names, but some other districts have had some bumps, when they've tried to create change and introduce new school models. And I think you guys have been very deliberate about how you're communicating about it with the community. And it's not just press releases or stand and repeat with the photographer. I mean, it's sitting down shoulder to shoulder with people and listening and sharing.
Well, the work we're doing, I believe, it should transform people. Should transform people's lives. From my perspective, the component was educating the board as much as educating my team. We have these workshops before the board votes on anything. The members of the executive team sit shoulder to shoulder with board members and go over what's being discussed for further discussion. Then I will have breakfast or dinner with them one-on-one and clarify either any things that they might have misunderstood or don't understand. And then also it's just a good time for me to have those conversations to sort of give them that pep talk of, hey, we have a campus. Out of all our innovation campuses, I know what Chris was referring to. I got invited to someone's house. I walked in ready to eat. I'm going to have a good time. And the moms, this little group of moms, love them to death. Every time it's time, hey, Dr. how you been? Most of them are first generation moms. And so you really have to understand the context of that for someone who just came over from Mexico. I am a first generation kid, so I still speak some of that lingo. Then you throw in the whole Baptist background. I'm a Baptist kid. I grew up proselytizing in the streets, talking to people, talking about Christ. And now I just take those skills and talk to pretty much anybody. And so, but they showed up and then they're like, you're going to do what? I go, remember we talked about this. Oh yeah, but we thought you were just sort of pretending out loud. No, I wasn't pretending. Remember those surveys? We didn't think it was going to happen like now. I go, so when did you think it was going to happen? And they went at it with me in front of our potential partner. I was at A&M back then. And I said, I'm going to let you have your piece. I just stood there quietly. I hear you saying this. And they're like, well, no, you need to hear this. And so ultimately, I went back a few times, talked to them. I can't tell you they're 100% happy, but I can tell you that the message hasn't changed. Change will inconvenience some of us. But we can't take the attitude that, well, as long as my kid's school's fine, I don't care. So I don't have that luxury. The 16 square miles that we represent, today we teach children within the 16 square miles. But the hashtag we were using was beyond the 16. Our children have to learn to live in a world that is beyond the 16 square miles that we've introduced as their quasi-safe space. It is not fully safe. I don't think anybody would argue that with me. But the fact is, we need to teach them how to survive in our world, but also, more importantly, advocate. And so I know you love your children. I love the work that has been given to me because this is my calling. But if we have to inconvenience you, I'm sorry. But I'm going to come tell you and listen. I think in the past I think when you're poor, I remember actually reflecting on this once. When you feel like nobody listens, that makes it worse. So I'm going to go listen, and I'm going to be called out of my name, but I understand, because I modeled this for my executive team too. They're not mad at me. They're mad at what I represent. And that's okay. Today, it's okay. So, that's the where I'm coming from in serving our community.
Yeah. Well, that's such a good lesson. I hope that folks listening, I'm going to reflect on that, because trying to make change in the world is hard, because you're changing people's habits and you're changing their mindsets, and it does create discomfort. And like you said, but like listening, it's there's really no shortcut, right? It's just what you have to do. So, yeah. Well, I want to segue into, I guess, so, we're talking about like what are the circumstances in Edgewood ISD? What's the history? What are the expectations? What are the hopes? What conditions are creating this change? Changes in leadership, but also you mentioned having partners, right? And so like SB 1882 is the law that encourages districts to basically almost be like their own charter authorizers, right? And to create public schools that have partnerships and additional funding. So the partners bring in innovative school models. And you guys create this environment where they can thrive. So I was wondering if you could kind of reflect on I'll throw this question to both of you, like SB 1882, and like what did that unlock? Like what possibilities did that create for Edgewood to bring innovation into the 16 square miles?
You want to go, Chris, or you want me to go?
Well, I would say, I don't mind jumping in. It unlocked a world of possibilities, but I would say we would be remiss if we didn't start off with saying it also caused a lot of pause for members of our team and members of teams across the state, because not everybody is taking advantage of this opportunity, because traditionally there has been this conflict between the word charter and the word public school, even though charters are public schools, but the thought of this is competition, right? There are competition. Why would we work with them? Well, the answer for us was very simple. If we are planning to have a portfolio of school choice options, and we want to ensure that we're bringing all of those options into our West Side kids so that they have those opportunities that we believe that they should have, we don't have expertise in all of those areas. Dr. Hernández said that we're not all the smartest people, and so we recognize that we don't know everything. I've participated in IB schools. I've gone to some training. I've read the books, but have I ever launched an IB school? No, I have not. So why would I try? Especially when I know that there is an organization right here, ready, willing, and able, and they are excited to support us. And if we partner with them, not only can they provide that service to our kids, but we can get more funding for it to help our kids even more. Why not? We decided to set aside our egos and to say, you know what, we are going to partner with these organizations, not compete with them, but work with them so that we're getting all of the kids, and we're open borders. So we're not competing anyway. We're going to steal the kids from every other district around the area.
So I think the other part of that context of that, for those of you that are from San Antonio or outside, I looked at it coming in as I looked at it from a marketing and branding perspective. So the first year when I had my first convocation, I had to be raw with the staff. I said, hey, look, guys, here's what I see in the first 3 months that I've been here. Our brand is tarnished. So all of us we have brands that we build. You may have heard it called reputation, but we're going to call it a brand. Our district has a branding problem. So because literally I would go places and people would look at me the other way, like, I don't know that I want to be, work with you. And I knew the context of that. So really for us, I thought, let's get around people with expertise. So intellectual capital is extremely important when you're trying to build your portfolio. There's obvious financial incentives, but I think the intellectual capital is really what changes the conversation. Because if you're going to be vulnerable, for those of you that read Brené Brown, I love her work because she talks about vulnerability in leadership. We have to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, but it's okay to go find the help. And so it's no different than a doctor getting a second opinion. We have got to do more of that thinking in what we do. I don't consider charters my enemy. That is not like don't speak that word like they do in Harry Potter, like you can't say the name. It's not that dramatic for me. If they have expertise, we're going to get it. So the first time we reached out, it was to Sarah Beret, Pre-K for SA, experts in early childhood. And if there's anything I've learned, it's that those early years matter. We are in a situation, but it will take years to grow as a district. And why not start with our youngest learners, the teachers who want to work with youngest learners? And as we introduce the concept of innovation in 1882, I think it's personalizing it for people. You know, what I always say is innovation is not just for children, it is for families and it is for employees. Because the internal goal is that employees will also apply and say, I want to go teach at the early childhood school. I want to teach at the girls' school. I want to teach at the STEAM school. Whatever your goal is to do or to serve, we're going to get you to the right place, because if you go serve in a school that matches your unique purpose, you're gonna wake up every morning a little bit better for work. And so I think those are pieces of innovation we may have overlooked over the time. In terms of the community, the traditional, we have a STEAM night. Everybody come to STEAM night, or everybody, hey, we've got these times set up with the superintendent. People do take me up on my 6 a.m. times, but going to someone's house, and I always use this example. When we grew up, there's always this one lady in the neighborhood everybody knows. And if you know her and she sanctions what you say or do, you're in with everybody. So what I said to everyone is find out who these ladies are in our neighborhoods, get me in their house, I'll show up with some food. And all I'm asking is let me in, let me talk to people, let me beg for, meet us in the middle, give us a chance. We've been to so many homes now, and you know, at first it was just show up with some food. Then I started showing up with the band at JFK and the band at Memorial, and it turned into a block party. And so again, we believe in this. We live in our country. We believe in independence, but I do think there is something to be said for communal thinking and living. And we all tend to feel a lot more comfortable when we're together and we can express our opinions. And so I think we personalize our district more. So we do the marketing and the branding for those who sit on the outside, but we do the internal, we will go to you. And those things have to work simultaneously. And so that's the approach with 1882. Beyond the financial, there's the intellectual capital, there's the ability to sell your brand, and working with people who do something better than you, there's no shame in that. And so if it means charter, hey, we're all trying to help kids. And at the end of the day, that's what matters to me, is that children are taken care of.
Yeah, being humble and putting kids first means that you're willing to consider solutions that other people might have rejected by just saying, "Oh, that we don't do that here," right?
That's
but
correct.
because you're putting kids first, then all the options are on the table, like all the potential partners, all the tools in the toolkit. If it's SB 1882, and that you talked about, finding those sort of influencers in the neighborhood, right? That there's so much. I think there's so much problem solving we can do if we keep it like super local, right? That, in some ways we lived in very polarized times, but when you get to that, like really small neighborhood level, there's just a level of problem solving that happens when people are able to talk and listen and embrace change. And that gives me hope for the future. I'm happy to see in Edgewood how, by keeping things local and listening to people that you are able to overcome conflict. And I hadn't thought about what you said about when there's all these different innovative school models. I think of that in terms of what I see from families is that, like, there's value in a neighborhood school in terms of like everyone kind of lives close together. But when I see like the spark, like in a kid or a family of like, well, I go to this leadership program, or like I'm going to the STEM school, and like that level of identification that the family has, and like, when the kids, they see like they're envisioning the kind of future they'll have, that what that school is preparing them for. I hadn't really thought about the flip side of that for the staff, but like, of course, right, that they can have that level of investment also in like what's unique about that school.
Yes, absolutely. It's important. The power of the teacher, a high quality teacher in every classroom, is the most important part. Teacher and leadership in the school. And so if we start with the teachers and we support our principals on how to lead instructional conversations and reflections, then we're going to be in a much better place. I don't believe in planning for survival. I believe that we create the culture and we put the systems in place so that this outlives all of us. And I tell my team, one of you should put me out. I mean, somebody should come in and continue this work. Like, I'm not saying put me out tomorrow or anything, but we have to think legacy. And so there's already a lot of that, because you hear Edgewood Pride, Edgewood this, love it. Let's add to that pride by working together and building a future for our children that will outlive us. That ultimately will also, because I also advocate for the greater city. We're not just, yes, we may be broken up into systems, but this city is not, our city will not grow if we don't collectively understand that we are an international city. We just really haven't stood into those shoes. And so I'm one of those firm believers that my part in this big puzzle is to help the West Side and kind of work against that whole notion of, if you're on the West Side, then your zip code should not determine what your future is. And I know that's, it shouldn't. And so I have a platform I was given, I'm going to use it.
Yeah. And the city is not going to succeed if just one part of the city is getting ahead. We all need to get ahead, right? We can't leave anybody behind. You can't leave any kids behind.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to send the next question over to Chris, because I wanted to talk, if you could talk in more detail about the innovation schools. So they're organized into different zones, kind of different pathways, different feeder patterns. So I was wondering if you could give like an overview of that, and then I'm going to quiz you on like what are the newest innovation schools.
So we, of course, have our early childhood zone. So we have two very specific early childhood schools. And we actually just got a grant to start a 6 weeks old. So kids will be able to start at 6 weeks old. So truly getting them all the way down. The concept of birth through college is really what we're going for. So we have the early childhood zone, and those kids, of course, feed into the entire district. But then we have our STEAM zone. Most people are very familiar with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And of course, STEAM just adds in the arts component. Within the STEAM zone, there's a focus, of course, on those STEM activities that are pretty traditional that happen in STEM campuses across the state, across the United States. And the instructional design model throughout the entire STEAM zone is project-based learning. Specifically, we use New Tech project-based learning based out of California. It's kind of swept across the nation. It's in quite a few different places. And then moving on, we have our public service zone. And so our public service zone, we originally had that as education, health sciences, and culinary arts. It still is all of those things, but that's too long to fit on a t-shirt. So we rebranded that to public service. And then there's a really special component that I'm personally proud of for that zone, which is making the zone multilingual. And so think about, we're working to produce children and future workers in the education industry, health sciences, and culinary arts that are going to be multilingual. Right now, we have a focus on sign language, and of course, Spanish and English are the languages that we're currently focused on, hoping to expand that in the future. And then Dr. Hernández already mentioned our leadership zone. That is comprised of 2 schools that will actually launch this coming school year. And they're both as single gender campuses. So a all female academy and then a male academy. Of course, they will be a K-8 school after about 4 years. But initially this next year, the boys' school will be in K2 and the female school will be in K3. And both of those campuses will use IB as their instructional programming. So starting off with the primary years program and then moving into the middle years program. As we grow that program, we will also start the diploma program for IB at Memorial High School. And I didn't mention in the STEAM zone at JFK, which is the feeder pattern, the high school for the STEAM zone, we are launching a Pathway to Technology Early College High School this next year. Very similar to your what might have previously been known as an early college high school, but the P-Tech version of it has a focus on students receiving an Associates of Applied Science specifically. And then, of course, we have our Fine Art Zone, which is our last zone. And that is your traditional thought of in the fine arts and performing art, so both art as well as things that you actually perform. There is a goal that we have this to be fine arts that are not housed on our traditional high school campuses. So if you have band, well, we're not going to have band at the Fine Arts. It's going to be something like orchestra at the Fine Arts Academy. But we did expand that into the vocational concepts as well, because we have polled students, teachers, families, because I know what I want, because my children are in a fine arts school. but what I want is not necessarily what this community wants and this student body. So after receiving that feedback, we are adding the fine arts that are in the CTE oriented range, such as graphic design, will be in there in the first year. And we have a really phenomenal theater program already. So launching our elementary school this next year, the idea will be to expose the kids in elementary to all of those different components. We ultimately will have about 5 different strands that will go through high school and that will connect vertically all the way through. And then, of course, the instructional design component that we're going to be using in the fine arts zone is design thinking, made famous by the D School at Stanford, and then taken on to quite a few different organizations in bringing back collaborative cross-genre thinking in order to solve problems. So,
I think the other piece, Chris, I think that I want to make sure we elaborate on, the STEAM zone, the other option we gave parents as a result of surveys was you have the option of starting in Gardendale that went from a K-5 to now a K-2 school, or going to Perales, which we were going to do 2 K-2 schools, but that community said we'd like to keep a traditional K-5. Okay. And then we have Winston that just got approved to be the intermediate because those K-2 kids need to go somewhere. So that's 3-5. Then you go to Brentwood 6-8, and then you'll go to JFK for the 9th grade. But the distinction there was, the journey has taught me a couple of things. Folks are tired of talking about things like STAR. And so what I wanted to do for our community, and I felt, because I kept hearing this recurring theme throughout all the talks I had, was we need a space where children can just go be children. Learn about early literacy, conceptually teach math, emphasis on conceptually, because teaching those concepts young helps our children later on in life when they get to those gateway courses like Algebra 1, which most kids struggle with. But also having a space where teachers can focus on the science of reading. There is a science to teaching a child how to read and comprehend. And so that is where I posted recently, literacy is the vaccine to poverty. It really is. And so I want to create those spaces. We only have one now in the southern sector of the district, but the goal is to do another one in the northern sector. And for those that are from that would be north of Highway 90, we're not that big, but that's my version of north-south. But really having those spaces where we can move teachers there to get better at that craft. And what better than to partner with such a wonderful organization as Pre-K for SA. And Dr. Beret is just passionate, and Sarah's just, the work she does is just phenomenal. And so why not partner with them? But also with our Head Start programming of San Antonio, there's quality there. And we have quality folks in our district like Dr. Mary Miller, who oversees those programs. So that's all important. And just to kind of give you a little more context on why we did those things.
Yeah, no, that's like science of reading is something I get really fired up about. We've had guest posts about it, and and even during the pandemic, it's hard because families have been less likely to enroll their kids in early childhood education programs, and so we've been trying to give them recommendations of books and strategies and things that they can do from home. But that is depending on an investment of time from parents who may be juggling jobs and obligations, and these are tough times. So it makes it all the more important that the schools be as well equipped as possible to get kids caught up and make the strongest possible learning gains once as many kids as possible are back on campus.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you did a great job of weaving in both of my questions about the one about innovation zones and the feeder patterns and stuff, but also highlighting which campuses are new this year. So this is my excuse to pop up on the but the Edgewood ISD has a fantastic website. Trust me, I go to a lot of school websites. This is a really good one, because it's very graphical, right? It shows what the different zones mean, but there's lists and there's one pagers and handouts and stuff. So, I really encourage families to, click around on the Edgewood website. And so, if that was kind of overwhelming, what's the difference between the public service track versus the leadership track? It makes more sense once you get to the website and you can, click on everything and look at the, which grades do these campuses serve and stuff like that. So anyway, gold star on the website.
Very intentional and a result of Dr. Hernandez's leadership.
So there are a couple of things I wanted to be sure to touch on before we close out the interview. And one is, so the last thing we'll talk about is like the call to action, like where should families go to get more information. But before we get to that, I want to talk about just things I've noticed about the culture in the Edgewood community is that, and it's coming, it comes up from the families, but also comes through the school leadership and through the like the Edgewood Police Department, and that there's this aspect of just service, people looking out for each other and making sure that their needs are met, and just really going the extra mile. So I was wondering if, like, Dr. Hernandez, you could comment on, like, what do you see in the community? What's the culture like? What is it that motivates people to like give extra and pay extra attention to people in their community who are in need?
So I think one of the things that if you got caught for years in the headlines of Edgewood, in terms of most of those headlines were you had two options. It was either what was happening with crime or the school district and its show too. There's drama, and so but behind all that, what you had going on in our neighborhoods, there's people really reaching out and helping each other when times got rough. I think most people, for those of you that are in the city or out, the West Side is a rather challenging place to grow up in. Their opportunities are limited in many instances. But one opportunity that I don't think, no matter what life throws at you, gets to decide is that people help people. I've watched people give the last few of what they have and help the neighbor out. And so for me, when I got here, I saw that recurring line. So for a man that grew up with that background myself, that was a great opportunity to support the things that were already working in the district and highlighting them and really just using it as a source of inspiration, which was our police department. We have a wonderful chief of police who always goes around and explains that officers are peace officers. The word itself, peace. How do you keep someone in a position of peace? By feeding them, by giving them a kind word, by sometimes when their house burns down, because this happens a lot, jumping in and bringing them refrigerators and ovens, and unfortunately when people die, because we did have a couple people die in the last couple of years, we paid for their services all through donations, because unfortunately when you're living for the day, you're probably not planning for the day you're not here. And so in those times, I think that has been, I always say we are here to serve and support. I've said that since I got here. I say it everywhere I go, and I think that has really just become, amongst all our work, the humanity of this work is always important. I know sometimes people will wonder, like, how do you keep that at the forefront when you have all these other accountability and obligations and people want your time? And, humanity is not this event that you invite everybody to. It's an everyday thing. Sometimes it is getting, like you said, 6 a.m. That's just, I'm there anyways. And so creating those options for people to be able to come over. And what I tell people is, if you come, here's your options. You get some water, you get Perry, or you get coffee. I'll make it all, or I'll get it for you. But you sort of, I tend to use humor a lot, just because I think it just levels the playing field for folks. If I stand in line, like this week, if I'm standing getting my community labs testing, I sound like a commercial here. I'm using all these names, right? Community labs, and but that was my personality. I mean, I think when you look in my eyes, when I'm business. But what I will not stop doing is serving people. And I say this a lot, but it's not trite. I don't forget what it's like to pull the lint out of my own pockets growing up and nothing being there. And so now those reminders are what helped me get up and serve. And for this police department that we have, which I'm so thankful they are here. You don't have to coax them. You don't have to volunteer them to do stuff. Every officer that comes in because this is the theme of the department. So again, I think we build that in everything that we do. And then, in leadership, we teach people to have a little bit of grace. We teach people to say, it's okay that I don't know. And I'll be the first to go. I'll go first. As I always say, I'll go first. I didn't know this, and I didn't know, and here's how I fell on my face. You have to build a culture that allows people to work beyond the things that keep them in their nice little box. And that means that sometimes you're going to have to let people make mistakes, because when they serve people, that doesn't come in a nice, neat little box. You create culture. So I think that's all. That is what is Edgewood.
I'm going to share. We have a comment. This is one of the fun things about StreamYard. So Olga Markula says, EISD proud. This goes back to what you've been saying, that there's tremendous pride in the district and in the traditions, that it's important for the adults, the leadership, to deliver on that pride and to, we can celebrate people helping people, and how consistent that culture is through hard times, but we can also want for greater opportunities for the next generation so that they can have a whole range of options and they can succeed anywhere they go, even outside the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But I hope they'll always remember where they came from, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll hand it off to Chris to talk about like how should families research, right? Because it's open to like anyone in Bexar County or even surrounding areas. If they find the school model they've been looking for and happens to be in Edgewood ISD, and if they can get themselves to the edge of the district, then they can come on in. So Chris, how should families research more about the schools of innovation, and how can they apply for their kids?
Absolutely. So there are multiple avenues if you're an internet kind of person. So first, you can go to the Schools of Innovation website that's linked onto the homepage of eisd.net. You can click on the individual schools themselves to see what they have to offer. Lots of information if you just go specifically to those campuses. Additionally, there's information on applysa.org. We're a part of that, and so you can find that information there. Highly encourage you to check out the campuses on social media. Principals, assistant principals, educators are constantly posting on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Pick your poison. There's a lot of great information that I would highly encourage you to just see what life is like. What's a day in the life of? As well as we have videos posted where principals and teachers hosted discovery nights. And so if you check out the campus as well as the innovation website, you can actually get a really good idea of what life is and will be like next year on each of those campuses. And then I wouldn't hesitate to reach out directly to those principals. Their email addresses are on the website. They would be happy to provide a tour for you, to talk to you on the phone, and answer any questions that you possibly could have about what it would be like and why their school is the school for your kid. At minimum, they can give you the information and say, you know what, if your kid is really into this and this is the type of child you have, this is the place to be. And if you tell them, you know what, my kid is really into something else, most of them are going to have the knowledge to let you know what, you really need to call my friend across town because it sounds like that school is the best place for your kid. Because what we know is we are here to serve each and every learner, and we've got a place for them. It might not be that individual campus, it might be another one, but we're going to find a place for them.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to what you both been saying about, you guys, charter schools are part of the landscape, right? Families can choose among schools, whether it's traditional public schools or, sort of in-district charters, like partnership schools, whatever. The goal is to serve kids and to, have them be in a school model that's the right fit for them and that they're excited about. And then like the flip side, like Dr. Hernández was talking about, is like the staff and the leaders, the teachers, they get excited about it too. And it's creating, these environments where children can experience all these great things that traditionally have not been available in economically disadvantaged communities like Edgewood. That it's a new era of opportunity to open their eyes to what the world has to offer.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, how about Chris? Do you have any closing thoughts, and then we'll let Dr. Hernández get the last word.
I would just reiterate what we have already said, that our goal, our heart is to serve each and every one of these children and to bring into the West Side the school models that these kids deserve, that they're capable of, but for whatever reason haven't previously been here. That's our goal. That's what we're here to do. And we're maybe not perfect at it yet, but we every day are improving. And with a collaboration with our partners, with our employees, and with our parents, we're getting there on a day-by-day basis.
That's great. And then, Dr. Hernández, you get the last word.
So, I agree with everything Chris just said. Obviously, this really starts from a place of serving our fellow man, serving, supporting, being graceful in our approach, holding people accountable, because I think at the end of the day, while some folks may not be able to articulate that, they'd rather know where they stand on things, and being very clear. We follow 3 core values here. We talk about being professional, being accountable, and communicate. Those are our pack. That's our pack. And so we honor people that follow the pack. So what I would say to those of you that are out there is, we value intellectual capital. We value partnering. If there is something that you can contribute to this cause, I'm not asking for finances. I'm asking for time. You're back to intellect. We need people that can contribute to the collective pool of knowledge here. We don't pretend to have every answer because we don't, but we do open our doors to people that can come in and coach us. And I think we're now in a place of humility that we could say, help us get better at what we do, because the outcome of that is going to be children and their ability to find their place in this big world. And so that's where I come from as the superintendent. I've been given a great opportunity to lead in a school district that there's a lot of good people here. And I think much like most of our superintendents, we want to do what's right for children. And so, today I got to open up a nice little mini library that the folks over at SAS came down to our school district and did a little ribbon cutting for us. And, I kind of talked to them about the district. Don't let this be the last time you come. Hey, look, let's just face, yes, this is our reality. But come, help us. If we're really going to help people beyond just our words, show up. We will make the time. We need you. We can't do this. We can't do this without you, but our city won't progress if we don't collectively see that we're all in this together, because you can't have a workforce that isn't educated. You just cannot. The benefits for our city are going to extend well beyond our lifetimes. And so help us. Come find out more about us. I'm sure some people may still think, well, is that old Edgewood? Is that just give us a chance. Start with the website if that's the language you speak. Maybe follow me on Twitter. I do like to tell our story. Just give us a second look and let us earn your trust.
Yeah, it's been really inspiring for me to see how, so much change, and I feel like I blink and then new schools open. And it's very exciting, and the humility that you bring to it in terms of meeting parents in their own backyards and listening and talking, and putting kids first. That's really essential. So I'm excited, and I look forward to watching these schools kind of build up to their full model, and see the feeder patterns evolve, and then like you said, you're building something that we all want to outlive us, as far as the impact it has on the next generation of kids and the impact it has on San Antonio. So
yes. Well, I appreciate the platform. I'm going to put a plug in for our Las Palmas School Leadership for young women. They have Fierce Fridays. I think they said Fierce Female Fridays. So if you're out there and you would love to speak to our young ladies, right now we've got our kinder first and second, but I always say little girls with dreams become women with vision. And so we have to support that. And so if you have the possibility of doing that, reach out to Nestor or myself. We'll connect you to Ms. Munoz, that principals, and we would love to have your influence there.
I will look forward to it.
All
that
right.
sounds great. Okay, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, take care.